Leo Herrmann, Life Through My Eyes. Shalom, Mr. Herrmann, Mrs. Herrmann, shalom. The waiter at Café Zamir in Tel Aviv waves to us. The white terrace and umbrellas on the cafe's roof reflect the September heat of 1951. Tables are arranged around the perimeter, overlooking the Sunday streets of Allenby and Bielik. "Please come, your table is ready," he says politely, moving the chairs aside. I immediately order, 2 mitz tapuzin. Orange juice with ice, please. My wife, Lola, and I sit quietly. We exchange glances of interest over the edge of the railing, watching as time slows down. Below, in the shade of the rows of ficus trees, someone is polishing their shoes, right next to a mobile stand selling fresh citrus fruits. A little further away, a small line of children waits for the ice vendor. There's such a demand for ice, the authorities must have set a maximum price for it. Simply put, I see the everyday concerns. Thanks for that. I cannot help it now. A cocktail of sounds surrounds me. The jingling of bicycle bells, the clattering of horse hooves, the shrill laughter of children, and the clinking of spoons against coffee cups. The fresh breeze from the sea carries me away to memories of my childhood. The odyssey of my life began in March on the 15th day of the year 1888, in the Czechoslovak town of Lanskroun. I was born, the first child, the fruit of my mother Anna's and father Friedrich's love, into a Jewish family. The family saga of our lineage in Lanskroun continued to grow in the following years. In 1889, my little brother Pepi Joseph was born. In 1891, my brother Pavel. In 1893, my sister Helen. And the youngest, Emma, came into the world in 1897. At home on Krongasse, Komenského Street, number 84, there was a lively bunch of children. Among us Jews, mostly from the German Lanskroun, there were but a few. In the church registers, around 80 people identified themselves with the teachings of the prophet Moses. Faith was not a matter of concern. For mischief, the schoolmaster would pull the ears of all alike German, Christian, Jew, Czech. It was a beautiful day on Saturday, from the Hebrew Shabbat, a blessed day of rest. The rituals of Shabbat began on Friday at sunset. The aroma of shamin, sholet, filled the house. Mother lit 2 candles and recited the first blessing. In the evening, around the table, we listened to Father as he blessed us with a chalice of wine over the challah. On Saturday morning, we prayed, ate and sang. Sometimes Uncle Carol would come to visit with Aunt Sophia, his son Hugo and his brothers and sisters. The adults would engage in mysterious debates, philosophizing and reminiscing, and then they would sing again. All that festival colour settled deep in our hearts and warmed us. In winter, silence fell over Lanškroun. The snow lulled nature to sleep, freezing the ponds. The ice rink by Schmeisser's soda factory filled in the afternoon with icy performers, showcasing their dance skills on wobbly skates. With the early winter darkness came the frost. On the window panes, crystal-like vitrage painted what looked like duck feathers on fern leaves. The view of Lanškroun resembled Bethlehem, calm and peaceful. In 1894, when I was 6, the army arrived in town for manoeuvres. Lanškroun was adorned with splendour. The town hall in the square was draped in garlands and flags, while the military band played in step. The grammar school transformed into a temporary imperial suite, the gym into a court kitchen. I grabbed my younger brother Pepi by the hand and we ran with wide-eyed excitement towards the square. The emperor was just passing through the triumphal arch, Francis Joseph I, the man in the fitted uniform of the supreme commander of the monarchy. With a sabre pinned to his belt, a moustache and beard framing his cheeks, a military cap and medals adorning his chest. Everywhere echoed, "Long live! Hooray! Long live Francis Joseph I!" The last year of the 19th century came to a close. Midnight struck, marking the end of the old times. In January, we faced the long 100 years of the 20th century ahead of us. What would they be like? What would the world around us look like? What experience awaited us? My first semester evaluation from the town grammar school was approaching, as were my 12th birthday in March. Morana, winter, flowed away with the spring brook. The orchards bloomed and the bees were busy once again. Summer and vacation were already in sight. On June the 9th, little sister Emma blew out the candles on her 4th birthday cake. And then, on June the 13th, 1900, the candle extinguished for father at the age of 46. My beautiful, carefree childhood years, filled with songs and father's blessings over the challah, remained etched in my memories. A weight of responsibility settled upon me. Suddenly, I became the oldest Herrmann in Komenského Street in Lanškroun. Mother was there. I was 12. Pepe was 11. Pava was 9. Helen was 6.5. And Emma had just turned 4. My life's odyssey became to write another chapter. Adulthood arrived rather quickly, and when the chestnut trees in the avenue of Rudoltitzer bloomed in June 1906, it was time to complete and undergo the examination of adulthood. The result read, "Based on this examination, you are recognized as an adult with honors and eligible for university attendance," with a stamp featuring an eagle printed below. Mother wept. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she gently stroked my hair and face with the softest of hands. We embraced tightly. Without words, I thought of father and thanked God. The last long summer vacation at home flew by like water. The grain in the fields surrounding Lanskroun ripened quickly. The time for my departure to study law at Charles-Ferdinand University in Prague approached. I glanced back at the town one last time. I swallowed hard and boarded the morning train to Prague, preferring to do so without sentiment. The locomotive began to screech its brakes, puffing steam and taming the horsepower just before the arched structure above the tracks. Then the train slowly entered the newly opened hall of Emperor Francis Joseph's railway station. It looked as if the Eiffel Tower were lying across the tracks. Even though it was Sunday, there was a hustle and bustle everywhere. The dispatcher waved off the train's departure to Berlin. Passengers hurried for their timely boarding, conductors checked tickets, and the express food vendors hurriedly cashed in for the sausages they had sold. I adjusted my hat, grabbed my suitcase, and joined the procession toward the Ausgang exit. Prague. It distilled the essence of Czech events, culture, art, and politics. Right from the start of my studies in 1906, I participated in debates and philosophical discussions. Sometimes they ended at the break of dawn. In the midst of Stromovka garden, with a pistol in my hand, I was prepared to defend my opinion. The student association Bar Kochba was an elite society of the Prague Jewish community, which included figures like Franz Kafka, Max Brod, Samuel Hugo Bergman, and others. Gradually, our opinions seeped into ideology. Bar Kochba became a well-known base for the Jewish national movement, Zionism, with me at the forefront from 1908 to 1909. When Martin Buber presented 3 lectures on Judaism at our association in 1909, Zionism began to emerge as a legitimate request from Jews for their own land within Prague circles. One debate followed another, leading to the writing of articles and the expression of cultural Zionism. Jews read and listened attentively. My flair for literary expression and my sense of organization convinced the publisher of the Prague newspaper Zelzver, meaning self-defense, to hire me as the editor-in-chief in 1910. Articles were also published in Brno in Jüdischer Volksstimme and in Vienna in Jüdischer Zeitung. I worked hard writing and promoting Zionism, becoming known in the Jewish community across Europe. In April 1913, a postman knocked on the door of the editorial office. From his large leather satchel slung over his shoulder, he pulled out a letter. It was clear it had come from afar, marked with the word rekommendiert, recommended for delivery against a signature. Germany? I settled into my writing desk, gently pushed my typewriter aside and opened the envelope with a penknife. On the letterhead of the World Zionist Organization, it read, "Dear Mr. Herrmann, please accept our offer for the position of Secretary of the Executive Committee of our organization in Berlin." Signed by Otto Warburg, President of the WZO. My odyssey was taking me from the monarchy to Berlin, to Komenského Straße, number 8. I took on the office, and a year later, 1914, I added the role of editor-in-chief at the Jewish newspaper Jüdische Zeitung. My cousin Hugo passed the baton to me here. My battle with the typewriter continued, and I emerged victorious. Before long, my book, The Struggle for the Hebrew Language, was published. The quiet years in Europe were shattered by the rumble of cannons, fear and the breath of death. The Great War broke out on July the 28th, 1914. That year, with the morning mail, an affixed envelope from Czech lands, from Lanskroun, arrived on my desk. Joy was quickly replaced by anxiety, a nervousness about the contents of the letter. My mother's restless handwriting filled the lines, conveying sorrow and emptiness. My little brother Pepi perished on October 13th, 1914 in Terst while defending the monarchy. In my memories, I was once again a boy. Pepi, aged 5, held my hand. He waved and wished the Emperor glory, long live Emperor Franz Joseph, as he rode into the square in Lanškroun. Sadness slowly receded, sealing the memories deep within me. The Great War dragged on into its 4th year, frozen in the trenches. With the arrival of 1918 came the anticipation of splendid days. There she was. On February the 26th, my little daughter Hadash was born. Tiny, wrapped in a white bundle, safe in the arms of my wife Lola. Good news continued that year. At the end of September 1918, peace was negotiated in Bulgaria on the Balkan front. Soon after, the Ottomans followed suit. Over Palestine, the Holy Land, the government changed, now under British flag. Lord Balfour, the representative of the British Empire, promised the establishment of a Jewish state, but he also made a pledge to the Arabs. The consequences of this dual agreement for the formation of states would be borne by the great-grandchildren and their children. And, on October the 28th, news from the session of the National Council of Czechoslovaks in Geneva announced the creation of the Czechoslovak Republic. President Thomas Jan Masaryk received the title of Daddy of the Homeland. I had become a Czechoslovak from Lanškroun. The Great War ended with the victors and the defeated signing the peace treaty on November the 30th, 1918 in Versailles. New maps, orders and opportunities began to take shape, sweeping me, Lola and Hadash away to London. Negotiations, official meetings, informal gatherings, numerous trips abroad and diplomacy were part of the daily agenda during that time. In Paris at the peace conference from 1919 to 1920, I defended the interests of Jews in the new Czechoslovakia and met Jan Masaryk. He was 33, as young as I was. Our discussions and opinions took a similar direction, and a friendship blossomed between us. The boulevard of Champs-Élysées, coffee, a sense of light-heartedness in the air, the sound of the chanson sung by Miss Tanya, playing from the gramophone, and debates with Jan Masaryk about worldly affairs. Back to the British Isles, to London. Do you remember? Lord Balfour. He promised us Jews the establishment of our own state in Palestine. And for that you need capital. A lot of money and investments in the desert dunes. Along with my long-time colleague Berthold Feiwel from the Brno office of the newspaper Jüdische Volksstimme, we established the Keren Hayesod Fund in 1920. a fund to support the creation of the State of Israel, to aid Jewish refugees and to serve as a donor for developmental projects in British Palestine. And we too, a Brno man and a Lanskroun man at the founding. Remember the name Keren Hayesod? It will play an important role. Big Ben tolled the final minutes of the year 1922. Despite the often rainy weather, we, the Herrmann family, found joy in London. On January the 22nd, 1923, Ruud was born to Hadash. There she was, a bundle of contentment nestled in the embrace of her mother, Lola. Slowly and quietly, Hadash and I welcomed this little one into our midst, planting a kiss on our mother's cheek. In that moment, a wave of pride and joy washed over me. We existed, we were healthy, together and with surely beautiful times ahead of us. I can no longer recall exactly which day it was. Surely it was raining again. At the end of June 1924, a letter arrived at my office at 77 Great Russell Street in London. A letter that seems to resist being opened. It came unexpectedly, bearing the postage stamp of my father, Jan Masaryk, Daddy. It lay on my desk. I took a cigarette from the box, tapped it gently and lit it. Slowly, the misfortune unveiled itself through the black-bordered announcement. With deep sorrow, we announced that our deep mother passed away last evening. I took one last drag, held the smoke in my lungs, exhaled and extinguished the cigarette. Palestine was just on the horizon. No streets, just sand and stones. The fine dust driven relentlessly by the wind grew finer and finer. The Arabs call it Kamzin, which means 50 in our language. For 50 days the desert wind blows. It takes away from one sand dune and adds to another nearby, polishing the rocks along the way with its grains. The desert rose into the Golan Heights and fell into the white foam of the waves of the Mediterranean Sea. With the sea came more and more determination for the British Mandatory Palestine. Our ship firmly docked at the pier of the Holy Land in 1924. In the port of Haifa, men passed by dressed differently than we were. Long garments down to their ankles, well-wrapped scarves on their heads, deep wrinkles on their tanned, dark faces. "Disembark," the order echoed. In my right hand, I tightly gripped the leather handle of my suitcase. With the left hand, I held onto the rope railing as I moved down the gangplank. In the breast pocket of my jacket were the carefully folded entry documents. No one welcomed us. "Next," shouted the immigration officer as he checked. My heart raced, my voice and hands trembled. Between me and the dream of our land sat a bureaucrat in uniform at the table. Visa, passport, list, the thud of the round stamp. Next, and suddenly there it was, the land. Now slowly I placed the suitcase on the ground. I took out the folded handkerchief from my pocket, removed my glasses and cleaned them. Then I wiped the sweat from my forehead and returned the handkerchief to my pocket. Finally. Upon returning to London, my son was born on January the 9th, 1925. He was named after the guardian angel of the Israeli nation, Gabriel. 2 years later, in 1926, the journey to Jerusalem continued. The Keren Hayesod Development Fund also emigrated from London. With me as the General Secretary of Keren Hayesod, it gradually operated in several countries around the world, raising the much-needed capital for our land. The years in Palestine flowed into the 30s. In 1933, we were all at home in Palestine, Lola, Hadash, Ruth and Gabriel. The initially harsh climate change didn't sit well with us. The heat was intense, and rain was a rare atmospheric phenomenon. Occasionally, Lola and I would take the children to the sea. The white city of Tel Aviv was still under construction. More and more Jewish brothers and sisters from Germany were arriving, and Keren Hayesod was actively assisting them in emigrating to our land in Palestine. In Germany, men in the Munich alehouse were striking a dangerous chord of anti-Semitism. On September 15th, 1935, the Reichstag in Nuremberg approved the law of Reich citizenship, the Nuremberg Laws. This legislation de facto laid the cornerstone for the genocide of the Jews leading to the Holocaust. Anti-Semitic sentiment in Germany was rapidly intensifying. We were racing against Goebbels, the Reich Minister of Propaganda. In 1935, film director Judy Lemon and I filmed The Land of Promise. It was our first sound film from Jewish Palestine. It was a success. In August 1935, it won an award at the International Film Festival in Venice. By November, it had triumphed in America. It premiered at the Astor Theatre in New York with a gigantic banner on the facade reading, "The true story of people who returned after 2,000 years." Albert Einstein joined us for the premiere, accompanied by a dozen American journalists. It felt as though we had won this round against Goebbels. Not long after, Czechoslovakia was engulfed in sadness and grief. Snow fell over Prague, and on December the 14th, 1935, Professor Thomas Garrick Masaryk passed away. I thought of Jan Masaryk, my friend from Paris. In the melancholy of grief, I penned a heartfelt condolence and corresponded to Prague. And so, even while in Palestine, London, New York, and on my journeys from our land, the events of Czechoslovakia weighed heavily on my mind. Purposeful demonstrations by the Sudeten German Party intensified, along with attacks on police stations in the border regions. These escalated into defensive military operations by the Czechoslovak army to maintain order and territory. Diplomatic notes transformed into ultimatums. Hitler threatened the annexation of Czechoslovakia. Poland also delivered an ultimatum to Prague with territorial claim of Čechin and Slovakia, following a loss in arbitration with Hungary over the southern and eastern borders of Slovakia. Czechoslovakia trembled at its foundations, surrounded by hatred. Right on the morning of September the 30th, just hours after the signing of the Munich Agreement, I witnessed the exodus of 20,000 Jews from the Sudetenland with my own eyes. A march to nowhere. Homeless refugees in their own country, without passports, in injustice, despised. I rushed back to London to take urgent measures. The only one who helped me was Jan Masaryk, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Czechoslovak Republic, my friend from Paris. On November the 10th, 1938, I boarded a London double-decker bus to go to Jan's embassy on Grosvenor Place. Streams of rain trickled down the bus windows, and on my lap lay a leather briefcase with a memorandum, a reminder of the post-Munich scenes in Czechoslovakia containing mandates from the leaders of Jewish communities. A tumultuous stream of thoughts raced through my head, leaping over one another like grasshoppers. Jan provided me with a personal recommendation and negotiated significant financial assistance for the transfer of Jews from Czechoslovakia to Palestine. 2,506 people emigrated. They saved themselves. I arrived in Czechoslovakia in Lanskroun at the end of the Indian summer on October 3rd, 1945. It was raining. The rain mirrored my internal tension, my nervousness. In Ostrov, just before Lanskroun, I saw Sudeten Germans for the first time. A white armband distinguished them from others, from the Czechs. At 11:45, we drove along the ridge by the long pond, turning toward the town. The house on Krongasse, Komenského, number 84, where I grew up, had become a distant memory. I no longer wished to acknowledge its existence. It had fallen into disrepair, a shell of the Herrmann family. We stopped only at the cemetery. The place where my mother was buried no longer exists. The Nazis had destroyed the tombstones and human remains of the Jews. I depart from Lanskroun not daring to glance back over my shoulder. Memories of warm summers, juicy fruits, my mother, my father, when we were children, remained within me. The warmth of the Herrmann family now lies 3,500 kilometers to the south in Jerusalem. Leo, Leo!
Hello.
Lola's gentle whisper and the touch of her hand pull me back to Tel Aviv, to September 1951. I smile at her, she smiles back. How many sentences from different parts of the world have I sent her in letters? We have shared so much beauty, sorrows and wounds together. Hadash, at 33, has become a beautiful young woman. Ruth has just celebrated her 28th birthday, and Gabriel will be turning 27 in a few months. There are still many beautiful times ahead of us. Leo Herrmann unexpectedly left this world on the night of Monday, September the 10th, 1951, in the white city of Tel Aviv. His life came to completion at the age of 63.